Can you imagine sitting in the back of a glittering ballroom, your heart pounding, as the bride raises her champagne glass and declares with a smirk, "I saved him from that broken woman"? That's exactly where I found myself at my ex's wedding, surrounded by laughter, real, stinging laughter. People actually clinked their glasses, nodding and smiling as if Serena, the bride, had just delivered the wittiest punchline of the night. My face burned, not from shame, oh no, but from the fiery rush of every buried memory, clawing its way to the surface. My stomach churned, how could it not? But I stayed rooted in my seat. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just sat there, holding myself together, wondering how I'd ended up in this surreal moment. But then, through the haze of glitter and clinking glasses, something extraordinary happened. A waitress stepped forward, moving so slowly. It was as if she were wading through water. Who was she? Why was she approaching the head table? She reached the center of the room, right where everyone could see, and without a word, she took off her cap. Clutching it tightly in her hand, she locked eyes with Serena, and in a voice that sliced through the noise, she said, "I'm his daughter, and I have something to say." The laughter died instantly. Serena's face drained of color, her mouth gaping open like a fish out of water. No words came out, just pure, sharp silence. Can you feel the weight of that moment? Everything changed right then and there, and the room held its breath, waiting for what came next. Have you ever felt that gut-wrenching instinct screaming at you to run, to turn around and flee? That's exactly how I felt, sitting in my car outside the Ridgewood Grand Hotel, my hands trembling as I clutched an ivory invitation adorned with delicate gold trim. It had arrived in the mail a month ago. No return address. Just my name, Amara Lane, etched in elegant calligraphy. I didn't recognize. I nearly tossed it in the trash. Who in their right mind sends an ex-fiance's wedding invitation to the woman he abandoned? At first, I thought it was a mistake, a cruel mix-up. Then I wondered if it was some bizarre attempt at reconciliation. Or maybe a test. But deep down, I knew the truth. This was no olive branch. It was a calculated announcement, a warning, a way to ensure I knew that Gavin Rhee, the man I'd spent 6 years building a life with, was erasing me from his story. How could he do that to me? To us? I hadn't laid eyes on Gavin in 3 years. Not since that gut-wrenching night when he walked out of our apartment after I lost our baby. He didn't even glance back, just muttered that he couldn't live in sadness anymore, threw some clothes in a duffel bag, scribbled a note, and vanished into the night. But it wasn't just me he left behind. There was Laya, his daughter from a previous relationship, a little girl whose mother had walked out years before I ever met Gavin. She was only 5 when she came to live with us, and from the moment she slipped her tiny hand into mine and called me Mommy, my heart belonged to her. I wasn't just Gavin's partner anymore. I was her protector, her home. When Gavin abandoned us, Laya stayed, not by chance, but by choice. Can you imagine the strength of a child choosing to stay with you through such pain? For months after he left, I was a hollow shell. Waking up each morning felt like dragging my body through wet cement. The silence in our apartment was deafening, unbearable. Every photo on the wall, every song that played, every corner of our home echoed with the ghost of a family that had barely begun. There were days I couldn't even bring myself to answer the phone. I stopped talking to friends. I stopped looking in mirrors, afraid of the empty eyes staring back. But even in my darkest moments, I kept going for Laya. I packed her lunches with care, braided her hair with steady hands, and helped her study for spelling tests, all while fighting back tears so she wouldn't see me break. How did I keep going? I don't know, but I did. One night, I hit rock bottom. I was sitting on the cold bathroom floor, shaking after another relentless call from a debt collector. when there was a soft knock at the door. It was Laya, just 10 years old, barely tall enough to reach my ribs. She pushed the door open, sat down beside me, and handed me a peanut butter sandwich. "You forgot to eat," she said, her voice so steady it broke my heart. In that moment, something shifted. I realized I wasn't alone. Laya wasn't giving up on me. How could I give up on myself? That simple act of love from a child saved me, gave me a reason to fight. It took 2 grueling years of therapy, piecing myself together through odd jobs and late nights, buried in self-help books, to feel even remotely human again. Slowly, painfully, I rediscovered parts of myself I thought were lost forever. I started designing again, websites, logos, anything I could snag as a freelancer. We moved into a cozy, smaller place, closer to Laya's school. A fresh start that felt like a tiny victory. And then, something miraculous happened. I laughed again. Real, deep belly laughs that shook my ribs and reminded me I was alive. They were rare, but oh, they were precious. When that wedding invitation arrived, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It sat on the kitchen table for days, taunting me. Laya, now 16 and wise beyond her years, was the one who picked it up and read it aloud. Her voice didn't waver. "You should go," she said, her eyes fierce with conviction. "Not for him, but for you." "For what?" I asked, my voice heavy with exhaustion. "So I can watch him build a shiny new life with someone prettier, richer?" "No," she shot back, "so he sees what he lost." I stared at her, this incredible young woman who saw strength in me I couldn't see myself. She wasn't just talking about Gavin. She was talking about me. I'd been living like the broken woman he left behind, but Laya saw someone whole, someone powerful. So, with a deep breath, I said yes. Could I really do this? Uncle Joe, the man who stepped in to raise me after my mom passed, offered to drive us. He'd never trusted Gavin. Always said his smile was too easy, his eyes too still, like they hid something cold. I asked him to sit with me in the back row, out of sight but present, just visible enough to matter. I didn't know what I was walking into. A few awkward glances, some hushed whispers. That's what I braced for. But a staged humiliation, draped in white lace and sparkling chandeliers, that I never saw coming. How could I have been so naive? Before Serena picked up that microphone, before the glasses were raised and her venomous lies spilled out like cheap champagne, I stood in that ballroom and looked at Gavin, the man I once loved with every fiber of my being. And for the first time, I said it out loud. He didn't break me. He abandoned the pieces, left me shattered, but I rebuilt myself without him. That realization hit me like a thunderbolt, and it changed everything. The wedding was a spectacle, the kind you'd expect from someone desperate to scream, "My life is perfect." Crystal chandeliers dangled from the vaulted ceiling like frozen teardrops, catching the light in a dazzling display. The aisle was lined with pristine white orchids, flown in from who knows where. Every napkin was monogrammed, for heaven's sake. Even the string quartet played with a smug precision that made my skin crawl. I lingered in the doorway too long, my heart racing, trying to steady my breathing. Laya had already slipped away to the kitchen for her catering shift. She swore it wasn't about keeping an eye on me. But come on. I knew better. She wasn't just there to serve canapes. My fierce, protective girl was watching over me in her quiet, unshakable way. How did I get so lucky to have her? I spotted Uncle Joe near the back, already settled in his seat. He gave me a quick nod, the kind that said, "You're okay, kid, even if this feels like walking through fire." I slid into the chair beside him, folding my hands in my lap, trying not to look toward the altar. But I couldn't help it. My eyes found Gavin. He looked infuriatingly the same, broad shoulders, that stupid, practiced half smile that could charm a room. He was shaking hands with someone, a whiskey glass in his other hand, looking every bit the warm, magnetic man. Everyone thought he was, but I knew the truth. I knew the cold distance behind that smile, the way he wielded charm like a shield. I knew the man who left me in the dead of night, his eyes shallow, his silence deafening, not even a glance back as he walked away. How could someone be so heartless? Then I saw her, Serena, the bride. Her veil was a cascade of white silk, her blonde hair gleaming under the chandeliers. Her laughter was too loud, too sharp, like it was meant to cut. She leaned into Gavin like they were posing for a glossy magazine cover, every move screaming, "Look at what I have. Look at what she could never be." Their vows echoed through the room in front of a towering floral arch, Gavin's voice steady as ever. I kept my head down, chewing the inside of my cheek to stay grounded, to keep from spiraling. The crowd erupted in applause as they kissed, and Serena turned to the guests, her smile radiant, triumphant, like she'd just claimed a prize. Did she really think she'd won? Did she have any idea what was coming? The reception kicked off with a flurry of clinking glasses and waiters gliding through the crowd like clockwork. People laughed, gossiped, and fawned over each other's dresses, while I sat quietly, sipping water, forcing myself to stay present. Laia passed by once, balancing a tray of bruschetta. Our eyes met for a fleeting second, and she winked, a tiny spark of reassurance. "You okay?" Uncle Joe whispered, his voice low and steady. "Still breathing," I replied, managing a faint smile. But inside, my heart blew. Then came the toast's best man, maid of honor, a cousin, all the predictable stories about what a great guy Gavin was, how Serena had transformed him into a better man. I tried to tune it out, but then I heard her voice. "I want to say something," Serena announced, standing at the head table, a flute of champagne in her hand. Her eyes glinted with something sharp, predatory. She didn't look at Gavin. She looked at the crowd and then, oh God, at me. When I met Gavin, he was a good man, but he was hurt, damaged by someone who didn't know how to love him right. A woman too broken to see how lucky she was. My heart stopped. The words hit like a slap, my skin flashing hot and cold. "She almost ruined him," Serena continued, her laugh so light it made my stomach twist. "But I saved him. I healed him. And today, he's finally where he belongs." The room erupted in laughter, glasses clinking, a few people even clapping. Uncle Joe muttered something under his breath, but I couldn't move. Every fiber of me screamed to stand, to scream back. But I just stared at her, this woman who knew nothing about the nights I held Gavin's hand as he cried over losing Laia's custody. The mornings I wrote cover letters for his job applications, the ultrasound photo I hid in a drawer, the one I never got to frame. She didn't save him. She just showed up after he ran. How dare she rewrite my pain as her victory? Then I saw movement near the kitchen. A waitress stopped dead in her tracks, her jaw tight, fists clenched. It was Laia. She stepped forward, trembling but resolute, weaving past tables and clinking glasses toward the microphone. My heart pounded. What was she doing? She removed her server's cap, held it tightly, and in a voice louder than I'd ever heard, declared, "I'm his daughter, and I have something to say." The room fell silent, the air thick with shock. Serena's smile faltered, her hand frozen around her glass. Gavin turned slowly, his face a mask of dread, staring at the girl who'd just shattered the facade he'd built. Can you feel the electricity in that moment? The truth was about to unravel everything. Laia stood by the dance floor, her curls escaping her bun, her chest heaving with each deliberate breath. "She's not just the woman you're mocking," she said, her voice cracking, but fierce. "She's the woman who raised me." Serena blinked, stammering. "Wait, what?" "I'm Gavin's daughter," Laya repeated. "From before he met you, before he ran away, before he pretended we didn't exist." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A cousin lowered his phone. Unsure if he should keep recording, Laya stepped closer, her words raw, unscripted, heavy with truth. "He left when I was 11. Not just my mom. He left me, didn't call, didn't write, just disappeared. And you want to call her broken?" Her eyes flicked to Serena, who looked like she'd been slapped. How could Serena stand there, exposed like that? "I watched her work 2 jobs so I could eat," Laya continued. "I watched her cry in silence, so I wouldn't hear. When people asked where my father was, I lied, said he was on business, because I couldn't admit he chose not to love us." A woman near the front covered her mouth. A waiter froze, tray midair. Gavin finally spoke, his voice low, shaky. "Laya, not here." "Oh, now you know my name?" Laya snapped, stepping closer. "I sent you birthday cards. They came back unopened. I emailed you. Said I missed you. You didn't even block me, just ignored me. And now you let this woman trash my mom?" Gavin looked at me, his composure cracking. I felt no pity, no revenge, just clarity. I wasn't the one who should be ashamed. "She didn't break you," Laya said, her voice trembling but rising. "You broke yourself, then tried to bury us like we didn't exist." Serena turned to Gavin, desperate. "Is this true?" He didn't answer, just stared at Laya like she was his last chance slipping away. Can you imagine the weight of that silence? Laya walked toward me, each step a thunderclap in my chest. She reached for my hand, and I stood, our fingers intertwining. Something stirred inside me, not anger, not pain, but power. "She didn't come here to fight," Laya told the crowd. "She came because I told her to, because I wanted her to see she doesn't need to hide anymore." She turned to Serena, calm but unflinching. "She doesn't need an invitation to belong, and no one gets to rewrite our story to make themselves look better." The room was breathless. Serena's hand shook around her glass. "This is crazy," she mumbled. "She's just trying to ruin my wedding." Laya raised her chin. "You ruined it when you built it on lies." Then she turned, pulling me with her. The crowd parted, whispers rising like smoke. No one stopped us. No one dared. Gavin called out, "Laya," but she didn't look back. Why should she? Outside, the air was cool, the sky vast and deep, clouds like stretched cotton. Laya exhaled, as if she'd been holding the truth her whole life. She looked at me, tears in her eyes, but a smile breaking through. "I wasn't going to let her humiliate you," she said. "Not after everything." "You didn't have to do that," I whispered. "Yes, I did," she insisted. "You saved me. It was my turn to save you." My heart swelled. How could this girl be so brave? We hadn't made it far down the hallway when a sharp voice rang out, "Wait!" It was Serena, chasing us, her dress trailing like a tattered veil, her mascara smudged, her hands trembling. She looked human, scared. "You can't just hijack my wedding and humiliate us," she snapped. "Us?" Laya scoffed. "I only spoke the truth." "You could have done it privately," Serena said. "No," I shot back, stepping forward. "You could have kept it private, but you chose to vilify me in front of strangers." Serena's eyes darted between us, grasping for control. "I didn't know he had a daughter. Did you ask?" Laya cut in. "Or did you just believe the story that made you feel superior?" Serena opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Then Gavin appeared, jacket unbuttoned, tie loose, his face raw. "Laya," he said softly, "I never meant for this." She turned slowly. "Which part? Me being born? Abandoning me? Or letting someone else raise me while you vanished?" He flinched. "I thought I was protecting you," he mumbled. "Disappearing was protection?" I stepped in, meeting his gaze. I was broken too, Gavin, but I didn't leave. That truth hung heavy, undeniable. He ran. I stayed. How could he face that? "I can't take it back," he said quietly. "No, you can't," I replied. Laya's voice cut through again. "I used to tell myself you were dead, that something happened to you, because the truth that you were alive and didn't care was worse." Gavin's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at the floor, at the wreckage of his choices. Then Laya did something I never expected. She stepped forward, looked him in the eye, and said, "I forgive you." He blinked, stunned. "Not for you," she clarified. "For me, carrying your absence is exhausting. I'm done." He nodded, eyes glassy. "You're incredible," he said. She smiled, soft and sad. "I know. She made me that way." She pointed to me, and that gesture was louder than any speech. It was our truth, raw and unadorned, a daughter choosing her mother over the man who left them. Can you feel the power in that moment? Serena folded her arms. "So what now? You walk away and pretend you didn't wreck my night?" Laya tilted her head. "You wrecked it by building it on lies." I added, "If you wanted a perfect story, pick someone with no secrets." We walked away, into the drizzling night, the sky wide above us. Uncle Joe waited by the car, glancing at Gavin, still frozen in the entryway. "That's a mic drop if I ever saw one," he said. Laya laughed, and I joined her real, free laughter. I felt light, not because anything was fixed, but because I knew who I was. And so did Laya. Now, everyone else did too. The next morning, clips spread online, TikTok videos, grainy footage, titles like "Waitress shuts down bride's insult." I didn't watch. I lived it. Why relive it? Friends messaged, some apologizing for drifting away, others calling me brave. But I didn't feel brave, not when Serena mocked me, not even when Laya spoke. I felt like someone who'd stopped hiding. Gavin never reached out. No apology, no explanation. He knew there was nothing left to say. Serena became gossip fodder for a week, leaving the reception early, skipping the honeymoon send-off, moving out within a month. I didn't care if they stayed together or not. This was never about them. It was about us, me and Laya, what we became when others failed us. Something shifted at home after that night, quiet but profound. Laya stood taller, unapologetic. I caught her practicing speeches in the mirror, planning a podcast for girls without a voice. And me? I started writing notes, essays, one published on a parenting blog. Comments flooded in from women saying, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." That grew into a blog, a community, then a nonprofit, the second thread, for women healing from abandonment. We offer counseling, story writing, a space where silence isn't the only choice. But the real closure came one January night in our kitchen. I was washing dishes, Laya at the counter, flipping through her notebook. She looked up and said, "I used to wish my real mom stayed, but now I get it. Maybe she left, so I'd end up with you." I froze, then hugged her tight, breathing her in. Life doesn't always give you the story you want, but when you fight, when you stay, you write a better one. And the best part? You don't need anyone's permission to start. The reception was in full swing, and oh, what a scene it was. Glasses clinked like a symphony. Waiters glided through the crowd with the precision of a well-oiled machine, and the air buzzed with laughter. gossip and compliments about glittering dresses. I sat quietly at the back, sipping water, forcing myself to stay anchored in the moment. Could I really handle this? My heart raced, but I kept my composure. Then, like a fleeting lifeline, Laya passed by, balancing a tray of bruschetta. Our eyes locked for a brief, precious second, and she winked a spark of reassurance that said, "I've got you." Uncle Joe leaned in, his voice a low rumble. "You okay, kid?" "Still breathing," I replied, managing a faint smile, though my insides churned. How was I still here, in this room full of memories and betrayal? Then came the toasts, one after another: best man, maid of honor, a chatty cousin, all spinning the same tired tales. Gavin was a great guy, they said, and Serena? Oh, she'd turned him into a better man. I almost tuned it out, letting their words blur into background noise, until a voice cut through the haze like a knife. "I want to say something," Serena declared, standing at the head table, her champagne flute catching the chandelier's glow. Her eyes sparkled, but there was something vicious behind them, a glint that made my stomach twist. She didn't look at Gavin. She scanned the crowd, and then, oh God, her gaze landed on me. When I met Gavin, he was a good man, but he was hurt, damaged by someone who didn't know how to love him right. A woman too broken to see how lucky she was. I froze, my skin flushed hot, then ice cold, as her words hit me like a slap in a silent room. How dare she? She almost ruined him. Serena went on, her laugh so light it made my stomach churn. But I saved him. I healed him. And today he's finally where he belongs. The room erupted in laughter, real, cruel laughter. Glasses clinked, toasts were raised, and a few people even clapped, as if she'd just delivered the performance of a lifetime. Uncle Joe muttered something sharp under his breath, but I couldn't move. Every fiber of me screamed to stand, to shout, to tear apart her lies. But I was paralyzed. I stared at her, this stranger who knew nothing about the nights I held Gavin's hand as he sobbed over losing custody of Laya. Nothing about the mornings I dragged myself out of bed to write cover letters for his job applications. Nothing about the ultrasound photo I tucked away in a drawer. The one I could never bring myself to frame. She didn't save him. She just waltzed in. After he'd already run, how could she stand there, rewriting my pain as her triumph? Then, a flicker of movement caught my eye near the kitchen. One of the waitresses had stopped dead in her tracks, her jaw tight, fists clenched like she was ready to fight. It was Laya. My heart pounded. What was she doing? She stepped forward, trembling but steady, weaving past tables and clinking glasses. Her eyes locked on the microphone. I watched her shoulders rise and fall, each breath a battle. Then, in a moment that felt like the world held its breath, she took off her server's cap, clutched it tightly, and declared in a voice louder than I'd ever heard, "I'm his daughter, and I have something to say." The room fell silent, a deafening, electric hush. Can you imagine the weight of that moment? I knew, right then, that this night was far from over. Laya's voice sliced through the ballroom, like glass, shattering on marble. Every champagne flute froze midair. Every half-spoken sentence died. The silence was thick, charged, almost suffocating. People turned in their chairs, some whispering, others gaping. Serena's smug smile twitched, her hands still wrapped around her glass, but the confidence was draining from her face. Gavin turned slowly in his seat, his eyes wide, staring at the girl in the black apron and crisp white shirt, who had just ripped apart the perfect little lie he'd built this night upon. Who was this brave young woman, and what was she about to unleash? Laya stood beside the dance floor, her cap gripped tightly in her hands, her curls spilling loose from her bun like a halo of defiance. Her chest heaved, each breath pulled from some deep, unshakable place. "She's not just the woman you're mocking," she said, her voice cracking at the edges but fierce with truth. "She's the woman who raised me. Serena blinked, her confusion almost comical. Wait, what? She stammered. Laya didn't flinch. I'm Gavin's daughter, she repeated, her words ringing out. From before he met you, from before he ran away, from before he pretended we didn't exist. The air shifted, heavy with shock. A few guests gasped audibly. I saw one of Gavin's cousins slowly lower his phone, unsure if he should keep filming this unraveling drama. Laya took a step forward, her words unscripted, raw, carrying the weight of years of pain. He left when I was 11, not just my mom. He left me. Didn't call, didn't write, just vanished. And you want to call her broken? Her eyes flicked to Serena, who suddenly looked like she was standing on quicksand. How could Serena face that truth? I watched her work 2 jobs so I could have food on the table, Laya continued, her voice shaking but growing stronger. I watched her cry in silence, so I wouldn't hear her pain. When people asked where my father was, I lied, said he was away on business, because I couldn't bear to admit he chose not to love us. A woman near the front covered her mouth, tears in her eyes. A waiter stood frozen, his tray hovering midair. Gavin finally spoke, his voice low, cautious, almost pleading. Laya, not here. Oh, now you remember my name? Laya snapped, stepping closer, her eyes blazing. I sent you birthday cards. They came back unopened. I emailed you, poured my heart out. Said I missed you, you didn't even bother to block me, just ignored me. And now you stand here, letting this woman talk about my mom like she's trash. Gavin looked at me then, and for the first time, his polished facade cracked. I didn't feel pity or vengeance, just a piercing clarity. I wasn't the one who should be ashamed. She didn't break you, Laya said, her voice trembling but rising like a storm. You broke yourself, and then you tried to bury us like we didn't exist. Serena's eyes darted around, searching for an ally, but the room offered no refuge. Is this true? She demanded, turning to Gavin, her voice sharp with desperation. He didn't answer. He just stared at Laya, like she was a stranger, wearing the face of his last chance. Can you feel the tension? The raw truth hanging in the air? Laya walked toward me, each step a thunderclap echoing in my chest. She reached for my hand, and I stood, my fingers wrapping around hers. In that small, powerful gesture, something long dormant stirred inside me, not rage, not bitterness, but a fierce, undeniable power. She didn't come here to fight, Laya told the crowd, her voice steady now. She came because I told her to, because I wanted her to see she doesn't need to hide anymore. Then she turned to Serena, calm but unyielding. She doesn't need an invitation to belong in any room, and no one gets to rewrite our story to make themselves look better. The room held its breath, every eye on us. Serena's hand trembled around her champagne flute, her composure crumbling. This is crazy, she mumbled, her voice weak. She's trying to ruin my wedding. Laya raised her chin, unshaken. You ruined it the second you built it on lies. Then she turned, pulling me with her, and we walked away. The crowd parted slowly, whispers rising like smoke. No one stopped us. No one dared. Behind me, I heard Gavin's voice, a single, desperate call. Laya. But she didn't turn back. Why should she, after all he'd done? Outside, the air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the chaos we'd left behind. Laya exhaled hard, as if she'd been holding the truth inside her entire life. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with tears but a smile breaking through, radiant and fierce. I wasn't going to let her humiliate you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Not after everything you've done for me. You didn't have to do that, I whispered, my heart swelling. Yes, I did, she insisted. her eyes locking with mine. You saved me, Mom. It was time I returned the favor. Can you imagine the love in that moment? The unbreakable bond between us? We hadn't made it halfway down the hallway when a sharp, panicked voice rang out, "Wait!" It was Serena, chasing after us, her once perfect dress trailing behind her like a tattered veil of pride, her mascara smudged, her hands trembling. She looked real for the first time that night, vulnerable and terrified. Laya turned first, her stance defiant. I stayed still, wondering what this woman could possibly say that would matter now. "You can't just do that," Serena snapped, her voice cracking. "You can't hijack my wedding and humiliate us." "Us," Laya scoffed, eyebrows raised. "I only spoke the truth." Serena's eyes flashed with desperation. "You could have handled it privately." I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "No, Serena, you could have kept it private, but you chose to stand in front of a crowd and paint me as the villain." Her gaze darted between us, searching for a foothold, but she was sinking fast. How could she face the truth she tried to bury? "You can't just do that." Serena's voice cracked like a whip, her words echoing in the dimly lit hallway. "You can't just hijack my wedding and humiliate us." Can you believe her nerve? Laya, standing tall, despite the emotional storm we'd just endured, raised her eyebrows in disbelief. "Us?" she scoffed, her tone sharp and unwavering. "I didn't say a single thing that wasn't true." Serena's face twisted, her perfect facade crumbling. "You could have handled it privately," she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my resolve ironclad. "No, Serena," I said, my voice steady, despite the fire in my chest. "You could have kept it private, but instead, you chose to stand in a room full of strangers and paint me as the villain." Her eyes darted between us, searching for some shred of control, but she was grasping at air. "I didn't know he had a daughter," she stammered. "I didn't know he did. Did you even ask?" Laya cut in, her words slicing through Serena's excuses like a blade. "Or did you just swallow the story that made you feel superior?" Serena's mouth opened, but nothing came out, just a stunned, hollow silence. How could she respond to that? Then Gavin appeared behind her, his jacket unbuttoned, tie dangling loose like a noose of his own making. His face was different now, stripped of the cold, polished charm I'd seen earlier. He looked raw, exposed, like a man who'd just run out of places to hide. "Laya," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for this to happen." Laya turned to him slowly, her eyes blazing with years of unspoken pain. "Which part?" she demanded. "Me being born? You abandoning me? Or watching someone else raise me while you vanished into thin air?" He flinched, the weight of her words hitting him like a punch. "I thought I was protecting you," he mumbled, his voice weak, almost pathetic. "Protecting me?" Laya's voice rose, incredulous. "You thought disappearing was protection?" Gavin's eyes flicked to me then, the first direct eye contact since we'd arrived, and I felt a jolt of clarity. "I was broken, Amara," he said, his tone pleading for understanding. "You know I was." I held his gaze, unflinching. "I was broken too, Gavin," I shot back, "but I didn't leave." That truth hung in the air like a thunderclap, undeniable and heavy. No matter how many years had passed, no matter how he tried to rewrite the story, he knew it was true. He ran. I stayed. How could he face that? "I can't take it back," he said quietly, his voice barely audible, as if he was speaking more to himself than to us. "No," I replied, my tone firm but calm. "You can't." Laya's voice broke the tense silence, her words raw and piercing. You know what I used to tell myself, she said, her eyes locked on her father, that you were dead, that maybe something terrible happened to you, and that's why you never came back. Because the truth that you were alive and just didn't care was so much worse. Gavin's mouth opened, then closed again, his gaze dropping to the floor, to his polished shoes, to the trail of choices he'd spent years trying to outrun. Can you imagine the shame in that moment, standing face to face with the daughter you abandoned? Then, something happened that took my breath away. Laya stepped forward, not with anger or tears, but with a quiet strength that stopped my heart. She looked Gavin in the eye and said, "I forgive you." He looked up, startled, his glassy eyes wide with shock. "Not for you," she clarified, her voice steady, but laced with emotion. "For me, because carrying your absence has been exhausting, and I'm done." He swallowed hard, nodding once, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You're incredible. You know that," he said, his voice breaking. Laya's lips curved into a soft, sad smile. "I know," she said. "She made me that way." She pointed to me, and oh, that moment, that simple gesture was louder than any speech, more powerful than any mic drop. It was the truth laid bare, no glitter, no champagne, no forced smiles, just a daughter choosing her mother in front of the man who'd left them both. How could anything be more profound? Serena, who'd been hovering like a shadow, stepped back, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "So what now?" she demanded, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "You just walk away and pretend you didn't wreck my night." Laya tilted her head, her gaze unflinching. "You wrecked it the moment you tried to build it on lies." I couldn't stay silent. "If you wanted a perfect story, Serena," I added, my voice calm but cutting, "you should have picked someone with nothing to hide." We turned and walked past them, leaving their stunned silence behind. The night air greeted us, cool and still, the sky stretching wide and deep above, clouds drifting like pulled cotton. A light drizzle began to fall, but we didn't care. The storm we'd just weathered? No rain could compare to that. Uncle Joe was waiting by the car, his weathered face softening as he saw us approach. He glanced at Gavin, still frozen in the entryway like a statue of regret, and nodded slowly. "Guess that's what you'd call a mic drop moment, huh?" he said, a wry grin tugging at his lips. Laya laughed, a bright, genuine sound that cut through the tension, and I joined her. It wasn't bitter or forced, it was real. A release of everything we'd carried. In that moment, I felt light, not because anything was fixed, or because Gavin finally grasped the depth of what he'd lost, but because I knew who I was. Laya knew who she was. And now, everyone else did too. Can you feel the freedom in that? The next morning, the story started to spread not in tabloids or newspapers, but in the way things travel now, like wildfire across the internet. Quiet clips popped up on TikTok, grainy wedding footage shared anonymously, videos with titles like "Waitress shuts down bride's insult with epic speech." I didn't watch them. Why would I? I'd lived every heart-wrenching second of it. Friends I hadn't heard from in years flooded my inbox, some apologizing for drifting away when my world fell apart, others simply saying, "You were so brave." But here's the thing, I didn't feel brave. Not in the spotlight when Serena's words cut like knives. Not when Leia stood up and bared our truth to the world. I felt like someone who'd finally stopped trying to vanish. Someone who'd stepped out of the shadows and into her own strength. Isn't that what courage really is? Gavin never reached out after that night. No phone call, no apology, no desperate attempt to explain himself. I think he knew there was nothing left to say. His story was written in the silence of his absence, and we were done reading it. Serena's name lingered in gossip circles for a week or two, just long enough to cement her as the punchline of her own extravagant party. Someone from the venue told me she slipped out of the reception early, never returning for the lavish honeymoon send-off. Word was, she moved out within the month. Did they break up? Stay together? I didn't care. This story was never about them. It was about us, me and Laya, and the unshakable bond we forged when the people who were supposed to protect us walked away. How could anything matter more than that? After that night, something shifted in our home, quiet but profound, like the first rays of dawn after a long, dark night. Laya was different, stronger, more confident. She walked taller, her shoulders back, no longer apologizing for taking up space. One evening, I caught her practicing her speech in front of the mirror, not out of vanity, but preparation. Her words deliberate and powerful. She told me she was thinking about starting a podcast, a platform for girls who feel they don't have a voice. Can you imagine the impact she could have? My heart swelled with pride. She was becoming a force, and I was lucky enough to witness it. As for me, I started something too. I'd always been terrified to speak publicly about what happened. There's a cruel shame in being left, a stigma that makes people look at you like your pain is contagious, a warning to stay away. But after the wedding, something clicked. I wasn't weak because I broke, I was strong because I rebuilt. So I started writing again. First just scribbled notes in a worn journal, then essays that poured out my heart. I sent one to a parenting blog, and to my shock, it was published. The comments flooded in mothers, daughters, women I'd never met, all saying the same thing. Thank you for saying what I couldn't say out loud. Those words lit a fire in me. How could I stop now? That essay grew into a blog, then a small community group where women shared their stories of loss and resilience. A few months later, I took a leap and registered a nonprofit, The Second Thread, a safe haven for women healing from abandonment, divorce, and emotional abuse. We host circles, offer counseling, and help women write their stories, both literally and figuratively, reclaiming their voices. I never expected it to grow the way it did. I just wanted to create a space where silence wasn't the only option. But oh, it became so much more. It became a lifeline, a community, a testament to the strength of those who choose to rebuild. But the most powerful moment of all wasn't the public closure or the nonprofit's growth. It was a quiet night in January, in our cozy kitchen, the kind of moment that sneaks up and changes everything. I was washing dishes, the warm water soothing my hands, while Laya sat at the counter, flipping through her notebook, her legs swinging off the stool. Out of nowhere, she looked up and said, "You know, I used to wish my real mom had stayed." My hands froze in the sink, my breath catching. "But now I get it," she continued, her voice soft but certain. "Maybe she left because I was supposed to end up with you." I couldn't speak. Words failed me. I turned, dried my hands, and pulled her into a hug so tight, I swear I breathed her in, her warmth filling every corner of my heart. Sometimes, life doesn't hand you the story you thought you wanted. Sometimes, it rips pages out mid-chapter, leaving you to fumble for the ending. But sometimes, when you fight, when you love fiercely, when you stay, you get something better. You get to write a new story, one that's yours alone. And the best part? You don't need anyone's permission to start. That moment, that hug, that truth, it was our story. And no one could take it from us.